Hi there, welcome back to The Discerning Choice. Yeah, it's Scott Goes Pop. My name is James Kelly, and as ever, we're going to take a look at the weekly GB-wide poll from YouGov, the poll that comes out every single week and always has something of interest. Although this week the changes at GB-wide level are pretty minor. Reform UK remain in the lead on 26% of the vote, which is down one on last week. Labour remain in second place, but they are down one as well to 19%. The Conservatives are up two, bit of a recovery for them. They're on 18% in third place. The Greens are in fourth place on 15%, which is down one. The Liberal Democrats just behind them on 14%, which is down one. The SNP are unchanged on 3%, and very unusually, Plaid Cymru have 2% of the GB-wide vote. That's up one for them, and that might be an indication of a bit of momentum for them, a bit of a snowball effect after the Caerphilly by-election. Although, of course, it may just be random sampling variation, but it's so unusual for them to be on 2%. There probably has some significance to it. Now, this is really a poor result for Labour. Again, although it doesn't quite hit the low of 17% that they were on a couple of weeks ago, as far as I can see, this is only the second time since the general election of last year that Labour have been below 20% in a YouGov poll. So a really, really poor result for Labour. It should be noted that Reform UK's lead in YouGov polls is consistently lower than it is in the polls conducted by other firms. It's not unusual for other firms to have them on single-digit leads, but when you have a lead as low as 7 points, as it is in this poll, then that's usually an indication that it is a YouGov poll. Other firms don't tend to go that low with the Reform lead these days anyway. Where other firms tend to agree with YouGov is in showing that the Greens have yet to overtake Labour to get into second place. But there is, of course, one polling firm that not only shows the Greens ahead of Labour, but also shows Labour in fourth place. And although that is way out of line with what the consensus of polling firms suggests, you can never rule out the possibility that the outlying firm is correct and that the others are wrong. That's what happened with Survation in the 2017 general election, where Survation were out on their own suggesting that Labour were doing well enough to get a hung parliament. Most of the other firms were showing a Tory majority. So it's always worth bearing in mind the possibility that that outlying firm, which in this case is Find Out Now, might be correct, and the Greens might, in fact, have got ahead of Labour. And there is actually an article on the Find Out Now website discussing the reasons why it actually accepts that Find Out Now is an outlier, but suggests some reasons why they might be right and the others might be wrong. It's mainly talking about why they tend to show bigger Reform UK leads than other firms. It doesn't go into why Labour might have a lower placing than with other firms. But the reasons for the potential underestimation of reform by other firms, by the non-Find Out Now firms that is being suggested is certainly interesting. It's pointing out that other firms tend to have too high a number of politically engaged people in their samples, which has been a problem with online polling since the year dot, ever since online polls started. By definition, if you have a volunteer online polling panel, you're going to get a disproportionate number of people who are really interested in politics. It also suggests, and this may be a sort of related problem, that the turnout, the projected turnout in other pollsters' numbers is too high. And because Reform UK voters are more likely to turn out in a low turnout election, that might be another reason why Reform are being understated by the non-Find Out Now polling companies. And third reason that's suggested is simply false recall, that a lot of people who voted Conservative in last year's general election are telling pollsters that they voted Reform, are wrongly remembering that they voted Reform, and as a result, their vote is being downweighted. And this should certainly raise alarm bells for independence supporters in Scotland, because this is just last year. If people are misremembering voting reform when in fact they voted Conservative. And the reason they're misremembering is presumably that voting reform is now considered a bit more fashionable than it was 18 months ago. There must be a very high probability that people who voted no in the independence referendum 11 years ago might possibly just be getting that wrong and might be thinking they voted yes because that's now more fashionable to say that you voted yes. So I think we should be pretty bullish about that. And instead of saying that there's a danger that the yes vote is being understated because of this false recall and yes voters being wrongly weighted down, we should maybe start saying actually that's pretty likely to be the case. And I do think that is pretty likely to be the case. Anyway, let's get back to the YouGov poll and to the Scottish subsample. The SNP are on 33% this week, which is a couple of points lower than in the last two subsamples, but within the normal range. As I keep saying, the SNP seem to oscillate back and forth in these subsamples between the low 30s and the high 30s. So the low 30s this week, but may well be the high 30s next week. And that's still a perfectly good vote share for the SNP. In second place, Reform UK, 21% of the vote. In third place, Labour on 17%. Fourth place are the Liberal Democrats, who are yet again ahead of the Conservatives. The Tories are on only 11%, and the Greens are on 5%. Now, if we pump those numbers into a seat projection model, just for the sheer fun of it, it shows you how even on a relatively lower share of the vote, the first past the post electoral system works heavily in the SNP's favour when they have any sort of, well, certainly if they have a double-digit lead, as they do in this case, because they are on 46 of the 57 Scottish seats at Westminster. That's about 80% of the total. In second place are the Liberal Democrats on 6 seats, which is unchanged from the 2024 general election. The Conservatives actually are in third place on 3 seats, which is down 2. And Labour, even though their vote is holding up, well, relatively well compared to what we've seen in one or two other subsamples, they lose 35 out of their 37 seats and are left with only 2. And there is no breakthrough for Reform UK. In this projection, even though they're in second place on the popular vote, they would take 0 seats. Now, the other big news of the moment is that The Guardian are suggesting that Wes Streeting is planning some sort of coup against Keir Starmer to try and take over the Labour leadership and to become Prime Minister, either relatively soon after the budget or after next May's local and devolved elections. So just out of interest, I had a look at the betting on the betting exchanges for the next Labour leader, which the last time I checked, which was not that long ago, Andy Burnham was the clear favourite because all the talk about Andy Burnham at that time. But he's now dropped to third favourite or fourth favourite or something like that, which, it's just shows you how nonsensical these markets are. There's supposed to be some kind of predictive god if you believe some people, but it's more like, if there's a story one day about Wes Streeting, suddenly he shoots up the betting of the story the next day about Andy Burnham, suddenly Burnham's the favourite. So I don't think it really means anything. And it's not as if Wes Streeting is just going to walk into the role. He just decides he wants it badly enough that Labour, the Parliamentary Labour Party, are going to let him have it. Because there is a clear perception that one of the reasons Labour are doing badly is because they have moved too far to the right. Certainly, nobody is going to think it's because they haven't moved far enough to the right. So if there was any sort of corrective, it's going to be a move back to the soft left. Can't be the Corbynite left because the rules have been stitched up to prevent that happening, but certainly to the soft left, which would preclude Wes Streeting becoming the next leader. I remember when I was very young and Michael Heseltine challenged Margaret Thatcher for the Tory leadership. The then BBC political editor John Cole kept using the phrase, "He who wields the knife rarely takes the crown," and that proved to be the case for Heseltine. And I suspect if Streeting tries to wield the knife, the same might prove the case for him. He probably thinks that the soft left don't have a standard bearer, and maybe that will benefit him. But I just feel that one way or another, some kind of soft left champion will emerge. They'll find somebody to rally around. Could be Ed Miliband. It could still be Angela Rayner if they feel that enough time has elapsed since her indiscretion became public. And I noticed in the betting, I didn't think the surge for Streeting made sense, but I noticed that Angela Rayner has sneaked back into second place in the betting. I think it is just ahead of Andy Burnham. I think that does make sense. I think she does have a really good realistic chance, as does Ed Miliband, but he's lower down in the betting and he's consistently been lower in the betting than I think he really should be. I think he's a real possibility too. Anyway, that's it for now. If you're enjoying these videos, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would really appreciate that if you would. And hey, Stu, what's the real story?